So I'm Zach. This talk's going to be about how to make it as a solo developer. It's going to be using a lot of the tricks and tips I've learned over the past 8 years in making my own apps to summarize those and help you not make the same mistakes I did and get you to a point of profitability with your individual apps as fast as possible. So this is kind of my background. I've built a dozen apps, bootstrapped an app company of 5 mil annual recurring revenue. Think a lot about this stuff, talk to a lot of people in the space. So yeah, I would say that like the caveats with going forward are, these are all my opinions. Some of them are controversial. Jake knows more than me, more than anyone, that I change my mind all the time. So some of these may evolve. Some of the points will evolve over time. So the thing about being a solo developer is you have to be a jack of all trades, right? You have to be good at product, design, engineering, marketing, customer support, basically everything, right? And that's tricky to do, and that's a big ask for an individual. So why don't we start with product, right? And product is all about what are you actually going to build, which is probably the most consequential decision you make with whatever product or journey you're going to go on with your app career. So it's important that you follow all of these things when you're thinking about your product. So your product needs to solve a problem. And I really love the idea of starting with the problem before you actually build anything. So typically the reason people search for products is because they had some sort of problem in their day that made them search for that app. So you're trying to send a client an invoice, so you search on the App Store, invoice app. And that is what leads to the download of the app and the revenue if that comes at some point too, right? So thinking of things through that lens is a great way to filter out good and bad ideas. And for example, Fitness AI or Card Pointers, which is like a great app for keeping track of your credit card offers. The problem is people can't keep track of their credit card offers, so they download this app, Card Pointers. And you can see these other examples. It's just a really great way to think about problems. So generally, picking problems that are painful, something that a lot of people experience, or the few people who do experience it, it registers high in terms of their scale of how important this is or how painful it is. That leads to a scenario where you can charge a lot of money for the product itself. So an example of this is on one extreme is life-saving surgery or something. That is a huge problem. So people are willing to, and it's something that'll save their life. So they're willing to spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars on that procedure. So taken back to the context of your specific app, the bigger of a pain point it is, the more potential there is to generate revenue. And to make it as a solo developer, that's the number one priority is figuring out a way to get to $5K a month, $10K a month in revenue. So you want to filter for problems that are at least somewhat painful so that people are actively searching out solutions for them. And on the other end, if you pick something that's too niche, where it's you're making a app that helps people figure out how to make their shoes clean. It's such a niche kind of thing. Sure, there's somebody out there who's probably I'll pay for an app that helps me do that. But because it's so niche, because it's not a high pain point problem, you're gonna have trouble charging money for that. Okay, so next part, when you're deciding what to work on, build something that you're passionate about. So Naval has this great quote, which is, if work feels like play, I'm gonna paraphrase it. If work feels like play to me, then I can play forever. And for other people, well, I'm jumbling it, but the whole premise is if it feels like play to you, whatever you're working on, then you'll be able to work on it way longer and way more intensely than anyone else where it feels like a job. So if it's just a means to an end, you're not likely to continue to do it for a long time. Yeah, and being an expert about what you're working on is also super important. So that's why when you're also thinking about what to build, it's important you pick something that you have some sort of domain expertise on. Because if you think about things through the lens of this product solves a problem, you need to be able to solve that problem for people. So if you don't know about the topic you're talking about, so back to Card Pointers, the app that tells you about credit card offers, that guy became an absolute genius about all things credit cards. Like nobody knows more about credit cards than him, and that's what enabled him to build this app that like is unmatched on the market because he's an expert on it. So like pick something you're good at that you already know a lot about, and if you're not, then you have to become an expert, which I'm like seeing firsthand. It's like my new company is about nutrition. So I'm like quickly becoming up to speed with like all things nutrition. And it's super important. And generally you want to build something that is something that people will pay money for. So that goes back to like what I was saying with a shoe shining company or something, where people tend to pay for things that fall into 4 different categories. So like people will pay to save time. Like you'll pay for an Uber because it's faster to get from A to Z, or just because you have to. It's the same thing with DoorDash, where rather than going to the restaurant picking up, you'll pay to save time there. You'll pay to be healthier, right? So all of these examples, like you're paying to save your health essentially, or making money. Like people, if you're asking people to pay money to save money or to make money, it's seen as an investment, right? So like I will pay $10 if it means I'll save $100 on canceling unused subscriptions or something. Or entertainment, right, where that's typically games or something. And then continuing on that note, there are some like tricks you can use to see if like the problem is something that people will pay for. So for example, this is something I love to do, is you go on sensortower.com and you just look up a certain app or competitor app or category and you see how much money they're making, right? So like if you are thinking of building a fishing app, it's all about fishing, and you look up and see there's another one that exists that's making 200 grand a month, then you know people will pay for an app like that. So if you do a better job or you add a different angle to it, it's a no-brainer. And it's the same thing is true if there's like some crazy competitor, like I know CNBC has some sort of like monthly product that they charge for like CNBC Plus, that's hundreds of dollars a month for like serious tech business people to get business news or something. If you build a simpler version of that, target the same market, then you can also generate revenue there. And this kind of goes into the domain expertise piece, but like you want to make sure it's something you can do a good job building, right? So like figuring out what your strength is. Personally, I'm like pretty good at engineering, but like I would say content and writing are some of my strengths. So like an app that's based around content is a good idea. Whereas like if you're really good, for example, at basketball, so maybe the app itself is more about sports knowledge, somehow taking sports knowledge and like distributing that to like the masses. Whereas like maybe you're an insane engineer, at that point, you want to leverage your engineering. So maybe you use like machine learning or something that is actually like dependent on what you're really good at. So like leveraging your strength is like another super important thing. So that's kind of product, right? And so product is like super important. You want to make sure you pick a sick idea in a sick space. The next thing you got to master as a solo developer is like design. And I think this is a good one to talk about because like I'm not a good designer by any means, but like there's a lot of crutches you can use, like kind of like cheat codes that make it seem like you're actually a good designer when you might not be. So the number one principle I would say is like user experience is always more important than user interface, right? So user experience is like how easy is the app to use, and user interface is like how good does the app look. So an app that looks good but is hard to use will fail. But an app that looks okay but is easy to use can succeed. So it's like having bad UX is like a deal breaker for an app. Like you can't be successful if your app is like impossible to use. So that's why like it's way more important to become like an insane like user experience driven app. And like the best way to get better at like user experience is you just watch people using your app. So like you come up with a thesis. I think there should be a button here that triggers this interface. And then after that, something else happens. You build that, you show it to somebody, and you say, press this button and tell me if you think it's like intuitive. And like you just watch them and observe them, and you can like even pay people to do that. And you just iterate, right? You learn things, you look at apps that have incredible user experience, like I don't know, TikTok or something that's just like really easy to use in your opinion. And you're like, okay, what are they doing that's like just super super easy. You can always take inspiration too from top apps in terms of UI, right? You look at a top app, you look at dribble.com for interface design. Like you can search food logging interface and just look at what some designers have made and put your own spin on it. Eventually, once you're making some money, you can pay a designer too. And there's, abundant resources on just like the fundamentals of design, like how to do spacing, how to think of laying out text, left to right, right to left alignment, like all that kind of stuff that is like very much something you can just learn and have like a foundational understanding of. And then something that's like just a great skill to have is being like a master of one design program. Like you don't necessarily need to be like a great designer, but just being really fluent in one design program so you can be like, okay, I have this idea for an interface. Let me just like throw it together real quick and then I can send it to somebody, get their feedback. That's a great skill to have. And again, it's like one of those things where like you learn once, and once you get it, then you're totally fine. Paper is also something I really love personally, where it's you can either get Post-it notes, map out a flow. You can just draw like, okay, there's a button here, it does that. Either way. And then my favorite, the design crutches. How to make people think you're actually a good designer when you're not. So again, you borrow heavily from well-designed apps, right? You use icon libraries, SF Icons, great one. Icons8.com, Noun Project. You take really good icons. You can use those as your app icon. You can use them, just throughout the whole experience. Icons always make things look cool. You can use a color scheme generator. There's a great one I found. I should have linked, but it just uses something with the color wheel to generate color schemes that actually because you're supposed to use like a primary color, a secondary color, and there's like kind of a science to it. So there's that. But yeah, I think like overall the hardest part of design and like the real secret sauce is figuring out like the flow. So like thinking about the information you want to present, how do you present it? So I'm right now working on this food meditation app, and it's kind of like a novel idea. Like there's not something that it that exists. And like the hardest part I'm dealing with is like, how do you present this information in an easy to use way for the user? So it's like maybe the user downloads the app and then every day they get one sort of audio clip to listen to, or maybe they just download the app and there's a whole library that they explore. So thinking through that part where it's like, how do you present the information? It's really difficult. And that's another thing where like, you try one approach, you ask people, okay, what do you think? And then you can continue iterating on it, get feedback, watch people use it, etc. Okay, engineering. So this is probably some advice you'll never hear somewhere else, which is like, obviously you want to optimize for speed in the beginning. That's a lot of people will say. Don't over-engineer, a lot of people will say, but this means don't over-engineer and cut corners, not don't cut corners. Cutting corners is advised in the early days of building a product. But the thing is, you don't want to cut corners in a way that the user can tell. So the app is kind of like a facade where like, they download the app, it looks great, it's well designed, but under the hood, it's a total mess. That's fine because like you want to get to the point where you're getting user feedback as fast as possible. Then over time, you start repairing the technical debt. But like you don't want to waste weeks and weeks and weeks building a perfectly scalable engineered system that nobody ends up using because the idea sucks or something, or the information's presented in a bad way. It's like I've just thrown out all my best practices with coding when I'm iterating on a prototype because you just want to be able to move fast. Yes, that's kind of what I was talking about here. And then SaaS tools are another great kind of crutch for engineering in the early days. Like if you're just starting off your app and you want to have a cool messaging system, just use Intercom or use like Sendbird, for example. And then once you have 100,000 users, 200,000 users, you'd be like, okay, maybe the pricing for this isn't working out. Let me replace it. But like, don't spend a month building out a one-on-one chatting interface when you could just pay somebody basically nothing because you don't have any users to do it for free in the early days. Yeah, so this is kind of talking about like the facade thing, right? Where it's like, if your product is the ML, like you have a app that automatically uses machine learning to cut out the backgrounds of photos, like you obviously can't cut corners on that piece because like that's the secret sauce of the app itself. And I like this one at the bottom, which is like, good enough is better than never enough, right? So like, if an app's never enough for you, you get feature creep. You keep trying to add more before you launch it, you're not going to ship it. You're not going to get feedback from users. So it's better to ship with, this is good enough. So that philosophy is something to like keep in mind. Okay, marketing. This is another like quick hits one where like you'll probably learn more from the other talks on this stuff in depth. But like for an indie developer, this is my kind of take on, if you're just trying to get to that point where you're making 10K a month, this is like the stuff to focus on. So App Store optimization. You want to pick keywords that align with what people who are searching for your app might be searching, right? So you have a food tracker app. What do people who are searching for food trackers actually searching? Are they searching food tracker? Or are they searching like weight loss? Are they searching lose weight? Or are they searching whatever? So like you want to align your screenshots and all of your metadata with like how the app actually solves that problem and not like, here are all the features of my app. Because like one thing developers love doing is being like, okay, my app has XYZ features, but like the user's like, I don't care about the individual features. I care about how your app solves my problem. So like framing all of your metadata, your screenshots, your app store title, your description through that kind of lens is just a way more appealing, like for a user who's searching and they see that information, like that's much more convincing to actually download something. And then, you know, ratings and reviews are just like super important when it comes to App Store search results. Like there's a number of hacks you can do with that. Like you have the iOS, in iOS at least, you have the rating prompt where you can ask someone to review the app. Like you should do that as early as possible. So like most people who use your app are writing a review. So like if that means right after onboarding, you do it right after onboarding. If that means, you know, asking them a few times, you could do that. And then a great hack for getting a lot of reviews, like written reviews, is like you send the user what looks like a personal message, and you're like, hey, so-and-so, if you know their first name, hey, so-and-so, saw you download my app, and I was really appreciating how you're spending time on it. It looks like you're finding it really useful. Was wondering, like, would you mind like writing a review? It would really help me. Like that kind of personal message where it looks like you sent it to them individually. I have that in like a few of my apps, and it's like absolute game changer. Okay. So, but yeah, I mean, ASO in general is like pretty important, and there's like an incredible amount of information out there. So definitely worth investing in as a kind of solo developer. And then, you know, some other quick hits here, like Apple search ads, never do basic, like you're getting ripped off. That's like a very kind of, Apple search ads is like a great way to get into paid marketing, where it's like, okay, I'm spending money. It's leading to downloads. Are those downloads profitable? Like it's a good way to get your foot in the door of trying out paid marketing. Facebook AAA campaigns are like kind of the gold standard for like spending a lot of money. Like if you want to spend 5K a month, 10K a month, or you know hundreds of thousands, this is the easiest way to do it. And it's great for app developers because it's super easy to get up and running. Like you basically don't have to do any targeting. You just upload creative, and Facebook will like show your ads to people who they think will complete your conversion objectives. So like, say you're going for purchases or like trial starts, they will just find whoever in the world they think will trigger that event. It's like super, super easy to set up. And again, it's like a ridiculously complex and nuanced topic. But yeah, if you're thinking of kind of getting your foot in the door there, I think Apple search ads and AAA campaigns from Facebook are a great way to start. But then like, in general, a great way to like bootstrap an app's growth is this one, which is like you embed yourself in the audience. So like if you're building an app for people who love running, where are runners? Like, are they on meetup groups? Are they in Facebook groups? Are they on Reddit? Do they have a weekly event where they get beers after a run? You want to embed yourself in the community, or you could even create the community yourself, right? You create a runner community, and then the app is kind of subtly being pushed, or like the app facilitates the whole community itself. And that's a great way to kind of like get your, bootstrap that initial marketing push. You can also do a thing where like you offer a discount to these people. So like say there's a Facebook group and I want to post about my app and make it not seem like I'm just grabbing for money. Say, hey, I made this free app that helps you track your runs. I think you guys might be interested in it. And when you have that kind of vibe where you're like almost saying you made the app for them and you're making it free, that kind of gets buy-in from the community where they're more likely to take action on it. And this kind of growth is like way more, I would say way more important in the early days than actual paid ads, because as I said on like the previous slide, paid ads can like completely prop up your business. Like if you're really good at coming up with creative and like subscriptions, like you can make it seem like your app's doing hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in revenue. And I've seen friends do this, but it's just like you have really good ads, but like your product's not actually useful. So if you can get buy-in from a community, then that's like an amazing way to show to the market and show to everybody and prove to yourself that like, hey, people are actually like interested in this underlying idea. And then, yeah, here's some other like marketing ideas that work, that I've seen work with a lot of people. I've tried some myself, is like building in public. You kind of tell people what you're building. Hey, I just built this app that does this. I think you guys might be interested. Oh, I just ran into this problem. Anyone else having this problem? By like posting on Twitter or like wherever your progress, people love following a story. And that can be a great way to get buy-in, especially if the people online who are following you are in the target market for your product. DMing people is great too. QR codes in public places, product hunt launches. All of these are kind of ways to kind of get your first few users. And then the last topic is monetization, which that guy probably knows a lot more than me about these days from Superwall. But the keys with monetization are like understanding the different business models. So there's ads, subscriptions, non-recurring purchases, and paid. So like to start, paid apps are like almost never worth it. Like if you can convince someone to pay for like an app up front, so this is where like your app itself to download it costs money. If you can convince a person to download an app and pay money right up front, like you can probably convince them to do a subscription where you'll make like significantly more money. So it's these days like not worth it at all. And non-recurring purchases, in my opinion, are like only good as a supplement to ads or as a offering with a subscription. So like if you're going to do a lifetime subscription, that's something that makes sense. But generally, again, if you're selling individual features in your app for like $3 or $5, those can be bundled into a subscription where you make significantly more money. So subscriptions are great. Ads are great if you know that the people you're targeting, like maybe it's for whatever reason, people who just don't spend money, like whether it's the country or wherever you're promoting the app. Ads are a great way to make money in that scenario where you can't get buy-in. But like subscriptions are great if you're selling to businesses or you're selling to kind of a high, you're selling to solve a highly important problem. And with subscriptions, one of the best tricks you can do is you incentivize annual plans. So like you want to offer annual plans for sure, monthly or weekly maybe, but you can incentivize people to choose an annual plan if you have annual and monthly by only offering a free trial with the annual plan. So like if it's 7-day free trial, then $30 a year and then $6.99 a month, somebody is more likely to do the free trial. So they'll be on the annual plan track. And annual is great because you get all of the money up front that you would have taken months to get from the monthly subscription. And as a solo developer, like your number one goal is like getting enough revenue today and this month so that I don't have to work a real job. So that's why you want to push annual subscriptions most of the time. And like a good kind of ballpark range to start is like the $20 to $150 a year mark, depending again on like how severe of a pain point like your app is intended to solve. And that's something to test. With Revenue Cat and Superwall, you test $20 a year, you test $40 a year, you test $70 a year, you test different trial lengths. All of those can help you squeak out like more incremental money, which will get you over that line that you need to do this full time. Yeah. And then paywalls is like another thing where like there's been hundreds and hundreds of hours and tons of effort devoted to like testing paywalls. Like you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like just figure out what the best apps are doing and do what they're doing. Like you already know like they're making millions of dollars. Okay, just assume they've tested it like a ton. Just do what they're doing. Don't waste your time there. Get inspiration from some of the top grossing apps. This is another huge decision where it's like, if you want to make the absolutely maximum amount of money from your product, you welcome the user to the app, and then you show them a paywall with no X. So there's like no free tier. Everything in the app requires a subscription. And under those scenarios, like your odds of like maximizing your revenue per user are highest. Obviously, depending on the mission of your company and like what your goals are, that might not be what you want to do. So for example, if you have a social network or something where every incremental user increases the value of the platform, then you don't want to paywall everything because you need more information and content in the app. So you want free users. And that in that case, you do freemium. But the whole app, no free tier plan is like, you'll make way more money than you would from a freemium one. And then these are kind of just other tips I thought of, which is like, you know, your first app, your second app, your third app's probably going to fail. It's important to like understand when it's time to move on, which is something like I've struggled with in the past, but generally like once you lose passion about an idea, that's like where you might want to put one project on pause and try another one, and then maybe you'll go back to the original one. But yeah, you got to be prepared to move on and just accept the fact that it might take some time to learn all these things. A lot of people are afraid to charge money. It's something that as a business person, you just got to get used to. Like, it's okay to ask for people to pay a lot of money, and if they want to, they will, and if they don't have to. And finding a community of other like developers is like probably the best thing you can do, where it's you are the product of the people you surround yourself with. So if you want to make it, then you should be around people who have made it, people who are also trying to make it, to maximize your chances. And that's it, guys. Thank you.
So, according to the tip, you mentioned that you probably actually the first several apps you developed effectively. So, what is your tips to, for instance, I have several ideas.
Yeah.
Several apps. How I can check what is the quick tips to check? Okay, if this product, my product will be good, or
yeah.
What is a quick start at least to check?
Sure. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So the question is, if you have a few ideas and you're trying to prioritize which one to work on first, what should you use to evaluate that? So I would go back to kind of what I was saying about the problem, where you look at each of the ideas and you say, which one am I like most able to do a really good job building? Which one is most likely to generate revenue? So to generate revenue, you research competitors. Are the competitors making money? Or is this something like people are paying money for already through some sort of other avenue? And then you can even do a 1 to 10 score for each one, and then you add up, right? So like this idea on a scale of 1 to 10, how much money could it make? This one's an 8. Okay, how likely am I to do an amazing job of building this? 1 to 10. And you do that for every idea, and then whichever one has the highest combined score, that's the one you build. Look at the competitors too, yeah. Yep.
Where did you find communities of other indie developers to commiserate with on the journey? Indie Hackers, of course, is a great spot to find folks, but do you find other great ways of meeting people?
Yeah, I think like Indie Hackers is great. Reddit's great. There's a lot of like Slack communities, cold DMing people. You can just talk in Twitter DMs. Twitter is another great place to find them. Meetup groups for developers, events like this for developers, or but it's, I mean, if you're really in the space, they'll find you too. Yeah.
It still just feels like it's so fragmented that there's some spots where people
yeah.
nothing like super.
Yeah.
Other question I had was on the paid apps. It's always surprising me that anybody still has an app that's just a one-time download. They haven't moved to subscriptions. Are there any scenarios where it makes sense to do that? Have you seen anything where that makes sense? Or if not, why do you think anybody does it?
Okay, I think so the question is, when does it make sense, when, if ever, does it make sense to do a paid upfront app? So the only time that makes sense, in my opinion, is where you know that there's going to be a fixed amount of development work applied to a certain app. So like, say you're launching an app that's like a finite guide to a museum, where you know the museum's not really changing that much, and like you download this app, you're gonna use it once and you're never gonna use it again. Under that scenario, maybe it makes sense to do a paid upfront version, but you could also just have the app, someone download the app, see all the features, and then have a non-renewing in-app purchase, which is the same thing. So $10 upfront, or hey, you get to play around with the app and do a non-renewing purchase to access everything. So in that scenario, where would you rather try to convince the user to sell? When they're in Apple's store or when they're in your own store, right? So it's almost like they come into your store, they get to see all the merchandise, and then you're like, okay, to shop here, it costs $10. Versus them just seeing everything from the outside, which is through Apple's lens on the App Store. So that's what I think.
Yeah, I'm still not sure either. Like, the only theory I could come up with was that when you look at some of the top apps in categories, it'll show a lot of ones that are still one-time downloads. I'm not entirely sure how Apple is determining which ones to show. Like, go to the top apps in travel, a bunch of them will be one-time downloads. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but
Even the ones that are... Wait, are you talking like in terms of top grossing?
Oh, no, not at the top. I would just like look at the category, maybe which are like popular rather than top grossing.
Because I know if you look at the top grossing charts, you will see very, very few, if any, apps that are paid up front in the top grossing. Like the top grossing are almost always like they have a consumable in-app purchase or they have a subscription. But nonetheless, there's still that top charts you can see of paid apps, which Apple delineates from free apps, which is, that's a great way to find ideas too. I love doing that because like, if it's at the top of the charts in the paid apps, that means there's demand for it and people are willing to pay. So if you just build a better version of that and add a subscription, then you'll probably, and like, if it's a paid upfront app, it's under monetized. Like, you know, upfront, like they could be making more money. So that's a great like little arbitrage opportunity where you're like, okay, this app.
Conversion rate's like unusually low as well because like the big driver of the higher search rank would just be people actually downloading the app. And so if you have to pay to download, your conversion rate is low.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a double benefit when you flip it to the subscription.
Yeah.
Anyways, I never figure out like why I do stuff like that.
Yeah. I think most of the people who still do it are like a little uninformed about the whole subscription movement, to be honest.
Regarding the platform, for instance, I'm the solo developer, and I realized that I'm stuck in some area. For instance, I need help of edition or help of design to move forward.
Yeah.
I don't have the time, or like it's better to pay versus to do it by myself. Which
I think like Fiverr is great for very bounded tasks. Right, so like say you're like, I have this page and I want it to look good. Make it look good. Okay, someone on Fiverr will do that for $20 or for $50 and they might do a pretty good job. Upwork is great for building a longer term relationship with the person you're actually working with. So on Upwork, yeah, it's like more medium term, long term. You can do short term too, but that's kind of the benefit of Upwork is like you can build a relationship. They start to understand your design requirements more and more without, they can like read in between the lines more. But Upwork will for sure be more money than like Fiverr. So I would say it depends on your budget. Yeah. All right, is that it? Well, yeah, thanks everybody for coming. Appreciate it. Hope you learned something. Thanks.